generally applies to all ships of 300 gross tons and upwards on international voyages. However, the GMDSS is equally valuable to other vessels, including recreational and other vessels which do not have a mandatory requirement under SLS to install equipment. GMDSS carriage requirements are also applied to some fishing vessels, by national legislation. Every ship must carry a core set of basic equipment that is applicable to all waters, supplemented by additional equipment that extends the ship's communications capabilities according to areas of operation. These supplementary requirements are defined by the distance offshore the ship will travel. The information in this course applies to Sea Area A1. The area within the radio telephone coverage of at least one very high frequency, VHF, coast station in which continuous DSC alerting is available. Whilst at sea, it is a requirement for small craft to maintain a listening watch on channel 16. Commercial vessels are currently required to maintain a continuous listening watch on channel 16. Coast radio stations are maritime radio stations situated on shore, which monitor radio distress frequencies, coordinate the radio traffic and relay ship-to-ship and ship-to-land communications. Most of them have also remotely controlled stations, that are just transmitters and receivers, that enable them to increase coastal water areas within continuous VHF DSC coverage. Limited coast stations are stations on land, established for the purpose of communicating with vessels at sea. These stations are primarily responsible for the safety of movement and operation of vessels within their local area. These stations are not licensed to handle public correspondence. There are no fixed hours for the radio service provided by limited coast stations, and many do not offer a continuous service. Hours of service are determined by local requirements. For 3 minutes past the hour and 3 minutes past the half hour, all ships fitted with the distress radio frequency bands are to set watch for distress traffic by voice on 2182 kHz. During this time all other transmission should cease. This silence period also applies to VHF channel 16. The other silence, in red, applies to distress traffic by Morse code on 500 MHz. A call sign is a unique alphanumeric identity that belongs to the vessel and acts in the same way as the registration number of a car. The call sign enables two vessels with the same vessel name to be identified separately. The call sign is also useful when the actual vessel name is difficult to understand. It can be used in an identification procedure via all means of communication. 9 Yankee Lima is the call sign of the coast radio station, North Post Radio, in Trinidad. Perform a radio check to ensure that it is working correctly. However, channel 16 should not be used for this. The radio should be turned to a 1 watt power setting, and the microphone should be keyed. Call radio check thrice along with the vessel name and the location. Then you can wait for the reply. It is important that channels are used only for the purpose for which they have been assigned. For example, channels authorized for calling should not be used as working channels. Channels authorized for calling coast stations should not be used for calling ship stations. VHF channel 16 is the distress, safety, and calling channel. This is used for calling another vessel before moving to a different channel, or for safety and distress transmissions. Before using channel 16, listen for a few moments to check you are not interrupting an important transmission such as a mayday. Ship-to-shore working channels are defined by the shore station or port control. Ship-to-ship working channels are defined by the company or companies operating the ships in an area. Ship-to-shore working channels are used in directing the movement of ships in or near ports. Messages must be about the operational handling, movement, and safety of ships. There may be a dedicated working channel for intership communications to and from pilots. There can be ship-to-ship working channels for vessels from the same company, and/or vessels operating in the same areas. Messages must be about the needs of the ship. Typical uses include fishing reports, rendezvous, scheduling repairs, and berthing information. Transmissions should be as brief as possible. Non-essential remarks, bad language, and unnecessary conversations should be avoided. It is an offense to use a transmitter in a manner that may cause a reasonable person to feel threatened or harassed. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard is responsible for coordinating search and rescue operations in conjunction with law enforcement and military operations. The Maritime Rescue Control Center is situated at the Maritime Operations Command Center at the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard Headquarters, Staubles Bay, Trinidad and Tobago. Vessels in distress or otherwise requiring assistance, or for the passage of information should call via telephone or radio either the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard Operations, call sign 9 Yankee Alpha, or North Post Radio Trinidad, call sign 9 Yankee Lima, for assistance. VHF Channel 70 is used by the Digital Selective Calling System. Voice communications are not allowed on this channel. Radio operators should keep a record of all distress alerts and messages transmitted or received. Particulars should include the station or stations with which the messages were exchanged, the channels used, and the date and times of the transmission and reception. Without an official logbook, an exercise book could be drawn up.